What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast. Nick Farabaugh here with you, and I am not alone today. I got my good pal Jarrett Bailey here from Behind the Steel Curtain USA Today as well. Jarrett, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, the debut on the show. I'm doing good, bud.
Yeah.
It's you and I know that you are a big like summer weather guy, and you know that I am not. So this weather at the moment, it's like 54 in Pittsburgh. It's tremendous for me. I'm hoping it's not going to lead to like an 80-degree October, but right now I feel great. This is my weather.
We'll be punished if you're out there in training camp in Latrobe. You might just be punished with, those 80-degree days that feel like 95, because that's what Latrobe always feels like, because there's
Right.
no cover in Latrobe if you've ever been.
It's that is the one thing that I don't like about Latrobe is that you're just getting beat to death with sun all day. But I mean I love it there and I love being at training camp. But that is the one thing that it is just constant, just directly hitting you.
Brutal. And if people don't know, I'm sure a lot of people that have watched this have been to Latrobe, but if you haven't, the field is literally like in the middle of the hills, so it's in the valley, so the sun just beats right down on it. It's brutal. Um, but Jarrett, I wanted to have you on today because I wanted to talk about the perception of the Steelers. I feel like maybe not our perception as Steelers writers, fans, whatever. If you're in the fan base, I think you have a perception of where you think the Steelers are, but the national perception of the Steelers. It's very odd, Jarrett. Usually the national perception of the Steelers is higher than the local
Mm.
perception. I actually feel like this is the first time in a long time we might either have that reversed or they're syncing up. It's weird, right? We're seeing a lot more criticism towards how they're going about the quarterback situation. We're seeing talk about Mike Tomlin, like Ryan Clark saying his voice got stale. We're seeing a lot of different things in the national media that usually is all about the Steelers and how like really good they are. It's kind of interesting to me. But I'm going to ask you this. We know where the Steelers usually land, 9-8, 10-7. I've seen people predict 6-11, 7-10 for them this year. Are they too low on the Pittsburgh Steelers right now?
Somehow, yeah, because like I'm not high on them per se, but each year for like the past like half decade or so, I would say since Ben Roethlisberger retired, like everybody has been like too high. I think almost, um, where the national perception of Mike Tomlin has always been like, oh, you can't fire Mike Tomlin. He's one of the best coaches in the NFL. Where now I think the pendulum swung a little bit too far the other way, where I think that it's good that people are starting to come around to be like, okay, maybe they should go in a different direction. But at the same time, we know as long as he's there, they're going to find a way to win 9 games. And so we do this. We see this every year where there's at least one or two people that are like, oh, I think this is going to be the year. They're only going to win 7 games, and they never do. So until I see that happen, I'm not going to be one of those people who subscribes to that thought. I still think at minimum they'll win 9 games. Once Aaron Rodgers decides to show up, that automatically makes them, I mean, at least as good as they were last year. So I think that they would win at least 10 games, even though the schedule is a bit brutal. Last year wasn't much better, especially having all their divisional games in the back stretch of the year. Like that was tough. But it's still going to be a team that's going to field a good defense. You're going to have a quarterback who, while he didn't live up to his, 4-time MVP status last year, it's still a guy who I would put at the tail end of the top half of starters in the NFL, which is more than I would say about what they had with Russell Wilson down the stretch last year. So I think that everybody, while it's good, we're starting to see more criticism for like towards the Steelers because it's warranted. I think the pendulum has swung a little bit too far in that direction where they're not going to lose 11 games. I would be very shocked if that
I
happened, but
would
I
too.
do think that people are coming around in the right way just a little bit too much.
Right. And listen, I don't love to parrot, what some people say, but just to point out kind of some of the things I'm saying. Adam Sheen on Mad Dog Sports Radio said that they're going to go 4-13. Like that's the
Brother, if
bottom will
they go 4-13, I will do anything Adam Sheen wants me to do for a month.
they will
That won't
not
happen.
like they will not. The bottom will not fall out like that under Mike Tomlin ever, I
Right.
think. The 2019 roster was far, after the Ben injury and the injuries they had, it was far worse than the one they had now. And that team went 8-8. So I'm not buying that. Dan Orlovsky said if Mason Rudolph starts, they're staring at 0-6, which
Bro, do you know when the last time they started 0-6 was?
when?
1968. They're not starting 0-6.
even with Mason,
Even yeah,
guys, you listened to the episode earlier this week where I kind of railed against the Mason love, but they're not going 0-6 with them. Even with Mason, I think they're going to go like 8-9. Like that, I really do.
that's the problem with like the diehard fan base too. Is, and I'm not trying to like, sound high and mighty here or anything like that. Like at the end of the day, we're all fans at the core of this. But like the people, it's crazy the 180 that Steelers fans have done on Mason Rudolph in the past few years, because I remember being at the preseason opener and Kenny Pickett's rookie year, and they showered that poor guy with booze because he came in before Pickett did. And now all of a sudden we're acting like he's going to be the franchise savior. I don't get that at all. I like Mason, and I think that he's one of the better backups in the league. But saying that this dude's gonna come in and all of a sudden be the franchise, that's a little bit much. Same thing with the people who are like, I don't know, Will Howard. Go look at the list of sixth round picks since 2010 and get back to me when it comes to that. Like, seems like a nice guy, but best case scenario is he's gonna be a good backup. So I'm with you on that, pushing back against the whole Mason Rudolph, Will Howard regime.
Yeah, I will too. I mean, that would set up well for the trade up next year, but
I mean, hey, look, you see the flag there. Drew Aller 2026. Sign me up.
I'm out on that. We could talk about 2026 QBs anytime, but I'm not a huge Drew Aller guy right now. I like some others like Lenore Sellers and
I'd be
Fernando.
fine with that. I'll take goggles.
Yeah, I really like Lenore Sellers a lot. Kate Klubnik, I'm a fan of as well. But we'll kind of talk about that. We'll talk about that when we get to the dead period of this off season on
Well,
here.
yeah, that's fair.
We'll look forward to a little bit of the 2026 class just because it's such a pertinent thing. But let's talk. I wanted to talk about this because I want to do a breakdown of the Steelers roster. Let's just go through each position, Jarrett, and you tell me if you agree with this.
Okay.
Okay. So quarterback is obviously the big one. Let's assume Rodgers signs, right? Let's assume Aaron Rodgers is here. I think that they're going to get pretty equal play compared to what they had last year. I think he's pretty equal to what Russ or Fields were last year. I don't think he's a downgrade. I don't necessarily think he's as much of an upgrade either. I think he's probably still, 20th, 19th best quarterback in the NFL, and I feel like that's where Russ was last year.
Yeah, I think at minimum they'll get equal. Let's see, Fields and Russ combined for what, 23, 21 touchdown passes. I
Yeah.
think that he can give them that. And especially with how Russ played down the stretch, man, like it was bad. And I understand that the playmakers weren't necessarily there, but when Russ first came in, like he was the man for a month, and then the wheels just kind of fell off. So I think that if they can get equal quarterback play in terms of like complete equilibrium of how Russ and Justin Fields did last year, that wouldn't shock me. And I think that's what they can expect at minimum from Rodgers. I think I'm a little bit higher than Rodgers than the national like consensus is right now. I did a quarterback list that I released and I put Rodgers 15th, and so many people, it's like
Wow.
people that, I'm friends with, are like, dude, what? And I'm like, I think that, when you look at how he performed last year, the Jets stunk, don't get me wrong, but I mean, he threw as many touchdown passes as Josh Allen did, and Josh Allen won the MVP. And I understand that's a very apples to oranges comparison, but there was still, especially like the final few weeks of the season, like there was some vintage Aaron Rodgers in there. So I think that while he's not, Aaron Rodgers anymore, he's still a guy that would be a slight upgrade at minimum from what they had last year. And at best, like I will let myself believe that he can have like a 2009 Favre with the Vikings-esque turnaround and maybe do some fun things for them. I'm not going to expect it, but I'll allow myself to be a little bit naive and think that it could happen.
All right. I'm not as high on Rodgers as you are. I think he's probably around the 20th best, but that's where we'll stick. And I think that's very similar to what they got last year. Running
Mm.
backs, I think an interesting discussion. I really like Jalen Warren. I've always
Yep.
liked Jalen Warren. I like seeing more of Jalen Warren, so they're going to get more of that this year. Not losing Najee, I've always liked Najee for what he is. I think, this is another thing in the national media I kind of disagree with. A lot of people think Najee Harris just straight up sucks. I never agreed with that. I thought he was a decent player. But I really like Caleb Johnson. He gives him an explosive element, and I think Kenny Gainwell is a nice running back three. So I don't know. I mean, losing Naj, I think, is a bit of a blow to the short-term impact. I think they're actually probably going to be better long-term if they can lock up Warren. I would extend Warren personally. So I'm not sure they're all the while worse here. I think maybe a little bit. I think Warren is going to come in and really showcase why he's good. I think people
Mm.
are really under. I think in the fan base right now, the most underrated player on the team is Jalen Warren. I'm not even
Do
kidding.
you, do you think he's going to start the year as one,
Yes,
or do you think they're
yes.
okay?
I think he's going to
Gotcha.
start the year at the one, and Caleb Johnson's going to have that early down workload, but I think Warren's pass pro and receiving ability are going to outweigh it. It's Caleb's weaknesses right now. He's going to have to work on it. But I really like Caleb Johnson. By the end of the year, I think this could be an upgrade. I think to start the year, it's probably a slight downgrade through the lens of how I view Najee. I think you're not as high on Najee though, so that might be.
Yeah, like I think that I'm still higher on the consensus of Najee Harris. Like I didn't think he was horrible by any means. I think that if you needed 3 yards, he would get you 3 yards. If you needed 5 yards, he would get you 3 yards. And that was basically like there wasn't any sort of explosiveness there. I think what was it? The run against Vegas this past year was that his career long run, the long touchdown run that he had. So like yeah, the home run aspect of Najee's game wasn't always there, but I mean, he was durable. He did, quality work with, less than quality offensive line throughout his time in Pittsburgh. So I was never like a Najee hater per se. I didn't think that he was great. I think he's a perfectly fine, slightly above average, maybe middle of the pack running back. And I do think that Caleb can end up being some like a replication of that. And I think he has a little bit more of a home run factored his game more so than Najee did. I agree with you that I love the Kenny Gainwell number 3. I think that he can give them a little bit of juice with a select handful of touches per game. I love that addition, and I think as a whole, they are better this year as a whole room than they were last year.
Yeah, I think there's a chance they can be. Right now, I think to start the season, I'd say slight downgrade.
I can
But
agree with that. Like I could certainly see like in the first 2 weeks, Caleb Johnson, I don't know, he'll have 8 or 9 carries in a game, let's say, and it doesn't go as well as people would like. And immediately we're going to see on Twitter, people are like, that's why they shouldn't have got rid of Najee Harris. It'll be a very short-sighted thing. But once like week 10, week 11 get around and he gets more comfortable in an NFL offense, I think he'll start taking off a little bit.
I agree. I think this has a chance to be a big upgrade by the end of the
Yeah.
year. So we'll see. Receiver, I think this is an upgrade too. It's not much of an upgrade. They still need another player in that room
Yeah.
to me. But I think Metcalf is better than Pickens. I think Woods is better than Jefferson. They
Yeah.
still have Calvin Austin. They still have Skoranek. So they basically have a lot of the same pieces, but I think little bit better version. It's still not a good room. They still need another piece here, but slight upgrade is what I'll say.
And there's things that they can still do to make it better. I agree that like right now it is better than what it was last year because I would take Metcalf over Pickens. Robert Woods is an upgrade over Van Jefferson. And, I was a guy who was a Calvin Austin doubter going into last year, and he certainly proved me wrong and showed that he could be like a valuable, number 3, number 4 option on the team. So I think that having him as a depth piece is good and getting him a certain amount of touches per game is good. I think it all like depending on what Roman Wilson can do, that's going to, really decide how good the room can be. But, there's other pieces that they can still add to be kind of the stopgap number 2, like Amari Cooper's still out there. Keenan Allen's still out there. If they really just wanted to bring in a veteran who, while they aren't their former selves, they can still play a little bit. Keenan Allen has a little bit more of that boundary slot versatility if that's something that you value. So like there's still moves that they could make. And obviously the report that they, were calling about Chris Olave would indicate that they're probably calling other teams too, just to at least feel out if there's a potential trade that they could pull off. So I would expect them to do at least one more thing. I don't know if it'll be a huge splash, but at minimum, I would expect at least one more veteran to come in. And right now, the biggest things that I'm going to circle in terms of the guys that are on the roster is, okay, can Roman Wilson live up to his 3rd round pick status and have a nice bounce back year? And are they going to bring in another veteran? But right now, I think that the room is slightly better than what it was a year ago.
I agree. Tight end push, there's like no change here outside of
Yeah,
Michael Pruitt for Donald Parham, and I don't even know
sure.
how you want to do that. So push here for right now. Offensive line, in terms of depth, I think they're slightly worse for wear. In terms of actual starters, I think this is probably going to be better, and the starters are probably going to be the same 5 you had at the end of last year with Troy Fautanu back in
Mm-hmm.
now. And I think Fautano's a boost. Second year for Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick theoretically should take a step forward. You worry about Broderick at left tackle. We'll see how that goes. And Sayamalo showed signs of decline last year, but theoretically, this is a young group across the board. It should be better. So, in terms of the starting 5, it should be better. And really, the depth is the same just because Herbig was out for the whole year. They lost Daniels really early. They lost Fautanu really early. So, McCollum is there, Anderson, basically the same guys you had as depth pieces. So, I think it should be better. We'll see. It's an optimistic being better, but it's based on the youth and the flashes we saw from all 3 rookies last year.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm sure they didn't plan on playing Mason McCormick week 4 when James Daniels got hurt, but had a lot of really good flashes. Did look like a rookie at times. But I think the upside is, brings a lot of confidence there at the right guard spot. Yeah, the big question is how's Broderick Jones going to look at left tackle, and that's the biggest overarching question with the unit. I think Fatano is going to be perfectly fine at right tackle. They had the confidence in him to start him right away, so I think he's going to be good. It's just a matter of can Broderick Jones step in and be the franchise left tackle that they drafted him to be. And obviously there were struggles with him last year in particular, but a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that they've been moving him around a lot since he got there. There hasn't been a lot of consistency with that. And, in terms of the coaching aspect of it, everybody's ready to make some changes in that regard as well. So I think that if Broderick Jones can just be as good as Dan Moore, which is, I think at his best day, a middle of the pack left tackle at worst, not very good. If he can just be a middle of the pack left tackle, I think that's good
Yeah,
for them.
100%.
So that it's a low bar, which I think that he can meet. And again, they drafted him to be that, but they knew that there was going to be some challenges coming in when they did that. So he's going to be the biggest factor in all of this. But I would like to think that they'll be a really good young unit. You talked about Zach Frazier, man. I mean, that is their already one of the best centers in the NFL, a home run pick.
100%. I think Valtano has a chance to be really good too. I'm really
Yeah.
excited to see Troy Valtano. I'm excited to see what Roger can do, but we'll see. The tape last year is bad, and sometimes it came down to mental assignments on top of that. So we'll see what happens there. Defensive line. This is a position the Steelers really reworked this offseason. Drafting Derek Harmon, drafting Y.A. Black, bring in Daniel Ekuale. To me, this is a room that's better. I do think so. I don't think that replacing Larry Ogunjobi's production and what he gave them is going to be that hard. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, if you look at his tape versus Daniel Ekuale's tape last year, I didn't think there was a huge difference between the two. They're different players, but I didn't think the level of kind of what you got there was different. I love the Derek Harmon pick. I think he's an instant spark plug to their run defense and pass rush. Black's a run defending three tech to zero tech, depending on how they view him right away. To me, this is an upgraded position, and it should
Yeah.
be because you put in so much to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're still going to have other guys that are going to try to contribute and maybe earn roster spots like a Logan Lee, like an Isaiah Loudermilk that are both back. So, we'll see what happens there. Yeah, I was very excited about the Derek Harmon pick. I think going into the draft process, I consistently said, all right, if they go with Harmon, if they go with Nolan, if they get somebody to put in the middle along with Hayward and Benton, and a guy to be the eventual successor to Hayward, then that's great. So I think having a line that features two young guys in Benton and now Derek Harmon, as well as Cam Hayward as being kind of like your top three guys in that aspect, and you have Black who can rotate in as a pure run defender. Those are pretty good, both in terms of depth and guys that you want on the field more often than not. So I think that overall the unit got better, and hopefully we can see not a repeat of what happened in Baltimore during the wild card round. It seems that they very clearly took that personally and wanted to address it. And again, everybody talks about the Andy Weidel effect in terms of wanting to build very similar to what the Eagles are doing, and we saw how that can work out with and I think JP Acosta at SB Nation has made this metaphor a few times, but where you can have like hockey lines on the defensive line where you can just have a bunch of different combinations of guys come in and come out and still be effective. I think that an approach like that, we're going to see more teams doing it going forward. And, Pittsburgh certainly has the personnel to try something like that.
Right, and this preserves Cam Hayward. Not gonna have to play as much, 36 years old,
Yeah.
to maintain his top level edge. Again, we don't have to spend much time here. They drafted Jack Sawyer, better than Jeremiah Moon. It's an upgrade.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah. A
it.
little bit. Yeah. And I think with this, and like, this is very much far ahead thinking, but, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're more connected to the team than I am by a good margin. But I think if like Nick Herbig keeps playing well, it's going to be hard to have him as a number 3 guy. Alex Highsmith's like dead cap money goes down drastically next year. If they wanted to make Herbig the number 2 guy, I think they're going to pay TJ. They can move Alex Highsmith maybe for a draft pick, make Herbig that number 2, and then basically make Sawyer the number 3 at that point. I think that's something that could happen.
I don't expect that to happen, but we'll see. I mean, a year can change so much.
Right.
Last year, this time they were talking about extending Russell Wilson, so we'll see.
Very true.
But that position's upgrade. The one position that we're going to get to now, I think, is definitely worse. Is inside linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
E-Rob from Malik Harrison. I think Malik Harrison's a worse player. I think Landon Roberts' leadership is going to be solely lost. They will get back Cole Holcomb, but is he going to be the same Cole Holcomb he was before he's hurt? So questions there. I think it's a good room. I like Peyton Wilson. I think he takes another step forward. Hopefully they can get more out of Patrick Queen. He showed signs of that in the second half of the year where he was playing better. But losing E-Rob for Malik Harrison is still maybe the move of the offseason. I still don't get. I still don't get. So I think it's slightly,
I
it's still a good room.
I didn't get it either, especially when you look at the money that Robertson got in Vegas. Like you couldn't pay that. I
Yeah.
I didn't get it. And replacing him with Malik Harrison, who's not nearly as good a player, really just like irked me to an like I didn't get it either. So I agree, it is worse off. I am looking forward to seeing year two of Peyton Wilson, though. Like genuinely one of my favorite players to watch. I was very excited when they drafted him last year. And he had games where he made massive plays. I mean, obviously the interception against Baltimore in the home game that they won was one of the bigger plays of the season and led to one of the bigger wins of the season. So he's a guy who's proven that he can make big plays, and I'm looking forward to seeing what year two looks like. And I think with Queen, yeah, we saw those things early in the season where fans were kind of waiting for him to like arrive as Patrick Queen with the Steelers. And yeah, in the second half of the year, in the first game against Baltimore at home, we saw a lot of that. And I think he got better as time went on. Hopefully, we can see a full year of a dominant Patrick Queen.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, corner. I think this is another position that's better. I do. It's short term better because they
Yeah.
patched it with Darius Slay, but guys, it's going to be hard for Darius Slay, I think, to be worse than Dante Jackson. Um, I admit that came out harsh, but I think the picks masked a lot of what Dante Jackson
Yeah.
struggled with last year. He also had the injuries. Slay was really good last year with the Eagles, and even if he's going to be 34, turning 35 in January, he was still really good. So I think that's a boost. I think Eccles is a boost to their depth. Beanie Bishop in the slot should theoretically be better. I could still see them adding a slot. We'll see how Sebastian Castro, Dante Kent, those guys end up working out. I'm intrigued by Castro. We'll see how that works out. Corey Trice is now kind of your 3-4. Pierre might not even make the roster. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a deeper room than it was a year ago. So this one's improved both at corner two, but hopefully in the slot as well, with Cam Sutton gone and in there for maybe Castro or Bishop. And then you have more depth there. And you still have the wild card ticket in Corey Trice if he can stay healthy. Hopefully, maybe that can happen. So I know people are concerned about corner. I understand, but I think that this is the best corner room they've had since like Mike Hilton, Steven Nelson, Joe Hayden days, I think.
I would agree. And like it is somewhat frustrating that they keep doing like these 1 year stopgap veteran CB2s because like they did it with Akella Weatherspoon, they did it with Patrick Peterson, they did it with Dante Jackson. Now they're doing it with Darius Slay, but Slay can still play. He showed that last year, even if guys like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell became like the focal points of the Eagles secondary. He's a guy that can still go. And I think not having to cover the top receivers every week is also very good where he can kind of age gracefully into being that really good number two corner. Trice, like we saw the splash play and the smarts early on in the year against Denver when he had the interception in the red zone against Bo Nix, and that really helped solidify that win. It's just the injuries has been, I think Omar Khan said it at the combine where it's like, he's got to stay healthy. And so they kind of got some insurance there with Eccles. I'm intrigued. I mean, do you think that they would utilize him maybe as a nickel guy?
I don't anticipate it from what I've heard, but we'll see where it comes out to next week. We'll see that for the first time, really.
Yeah.
But I'm not anticipating it. I think they're going to let Bishop, Kent, and Castro kind of figure that out first, and then
Mm.
if things deteriorate into that, then they might go there. But he's only played 150 snaps, and the way he looks in person to me looks way more boundary corner, um,
Okay. Yeah.
outside corner than slot.
And I think Sebastian Castro is another guy that really intrigues me too. I mean, you look at what he did at Iowa, played all over the defense, deep in the box, and the slot. So he did a lot of stuff. I actually have an interview with Sebastian Castro dropping up behind the steel curtain very soon, so everybody can go and check that out. So he's a guy that intrigues me as well. I think overall, yeah, I would agree. They got better, they got deeper, and it should be a unit that. I mean, you brought up Dante Jackson, man. Go and watch that Kansas City Christmas Day film. It's not very good.
Nope.
It's not very good.
He started out the year, Dante Jackson, the first 3 or 4 games. He played really well, like
Mm-hmm.
really well, and then it just kind of fell off. The injuries happened. He suffered a shoulder injury against Chargers, and while he was willing to tackle, he just couldn't tackle
Yeah.
very well. He had the nagging back issue, so he was in and out of the lineup. And when he did play, the coverage skills just were not very good. So not surprised he's gone, and I think Slay's an upgrade over him. But Safety is interesting. I mean, again, really not much change here. They didn't have Ryan Watts last year anyways. It's
Hmm.
hazy for Thornhill. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a slight upgrade if they could find Thornhill's Kansas City form for sure. That'll be a huge upgrade if they can do that. But considering what you have in Minka, honestly, the biggest way they can improve this is Minka getting back to being Minka. That's
Yeah.
the biggest way. Deshaun Elliott was fantastic last year. This one feels like a push to me as well for what we know right now. Maybe a slight upgrade.
It feels like we've been saying like we've been waiting for Minka to get back to being Minka going on 3 years now, which is unfortunate. And I understand that there's a lot more that goes into safety play, especially than just splash plays. And Minka's impact doesn't necessarily show up on the box score all the time, but you do miss those splash plays. And it had been a long time since he had a pick. I think what is almost 2 years, and then he got one against Baltimore on the road. But like you miss those splash plays, and I hope now that the secondary as a whole is a little bit deeper, he can get back to being kind of that center fielder and just lurking, especially because Deshaun Elliott is really good in the box. We'll see, like you said, with Juan Thornhill, what kind of role he carves out for himself. And then if a guy like Sebastian Castro can also chip in and make the roster, what they do with him. But I think the biggest X factor there is, can the secondary as a whole live up to its hype on paper, get better, and allow Minka to kind of do more of that, like, hey, I'm gonna patrol this area of the field and try to, be that ball hawk that he used to be. And if they can do that, then yeah, I think that this secondary and the defense as a whole has a big opportunity to get back to, what it was in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah, I agree. Special teams, again, just push it. Nothing
Yeah.
changing here. Maybe outside of Cam Johnson for Corliss Waitman. Either way, this is like the best punter situation the Steelers have had.
Yeah, especially because like
Maybe
Corliss came in last year and he
yeah,
played
it's
really
good.
well.
And Johnston was awesome for he unfortunately got hurt in week one. He was
Right.
incredible.
But
And
yeah, I mean, during the offseason, being seeing him just crush balls throughout the offseason, it's like, all right, I mean, this is going to be a guy who's going to be incredibly helpful in terms of the field advantage game. Obviously, he got hurt in week one, but Corliss Waitman stepped in and did really good work. So I think regardless of who's back there punting the ball away, they're in good hands. And obviously, Boz was the best kicker in football, so they can't get much better than that.
maybe I was gonna say, maybe this is a slight upgrade if they could just get any production out of the kick return game.
Mm-hmm.
Cordell Patterson was literally per return the worst returner in football last year.
Yeah, what a plot twist that was.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Father Time's undefeated.
Sure.
And on top of that, I mean, I thought he actually looked fine the first 4 weeks, and then he suffered that high ankle sprain against the Colts, and that really kind of nailed that cross, unfortunately. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But okay, so we have the full roster. I think this roster is better than it was a year ago. I do. I
Yeah.
truly believe that, even if it's not hugely better. The schedule is arguably easier. So there's that. So the Steelers, to me, I mean, I'm not going to predict them to go better than 10-7 like they did last year, but people are expecting massive regression. Like when we're talking about here, is the perception too low? I think it is. I think they're firmly in the 10-7, 9-8 tier. I think
I
we're
agree.
on the train for right where they've been. I don't think they're going to do much else other than that. But I don't understand people saying they're going to go, 6-11. I think that one is it doesn't match up to what I would say it does on paper, at least for
Uh,
me.
I think a lot of it is they're not taking into consideration that Rodgers will be there. B, it's anti Aaron Rodgers rhetoric, and they just don't like Aaron Rodgers. Um, I don't get it either. I also don't get, like Chris Carter pointed this out. They've gone 10-7 more than they've gone 9-8.
Yeah.
I don't get that whole thing either. Like I think at minimum they'll be 10-7 again, probably the 6 or 7 seed in the AFC, and it just comes down to, like, if they could somehow get the 5 seed and play whoever wins the AFC South, that's great. Then I think that they could really end this drought. But if you're going to end up going to KC, Buffalo, Baltimore, Cincinnati, like, you're going to have to really show that you can win a game like that, especially late in the year when they've consistently fallen apart. And that's what really, worries me about them is you can set your watch to when they're going to start losing games and playing worse. And it's at the end of November, beginning of December when it usually happens. So
Yeah.
I still think that they're going to be a team that is in the wild card hunt at minimum. I think at most they'll be the 6 or 7 seed. And then it's just going to come down to, can they end the drought? And it, hopefully it does end this year and fans can have a little bit of, kind of have their cake and eat it too, where they can see a playoff win and also watch the team trade up for a quarterback in the draft and have, a really nice few months of happiness there.
I've told a few people this. I was like, if they have a losing season, it's going to be like still in the playoff race, but they end up going 8-9, and
Yeah.
they're still gonna pick like 17. Like it's just not it's gonna be nothing crazy. Even if they have a losing season. I don't think they're gonna have the bottom fall out. I think they're like
I don't either.
I think the floor is like 7 and 10. That's kind of what I think. If just
That and
thinking
that is the absolute floor too.
yeah.
Like I the absolute like that is their bottom falling
I
out
think they
is
have
winning
a
seven.
I guess relative, I guess you would call that a high floor, and I think they also have a low ceiling. Like I don't think the
Of
ceilings are I
course.
think it's like fairly much 10-7 to 7
Yeah.
and 10 that range. So we'll see. But either way, I do think the perception right now, I think people are just really low on them from how this quarterback situation has played out this offseason and different things like that. And I understand the long-term vision. We've talked about it on here multiple times, guys, just about how long-term vision to me is super muddied. They're half in, half out. I wish they would choose one direction or the other. But
I could
I,
agree with that. Yeah.
I don't understand people thinking that, they're just gonna completely suck this year. I think they're probably gonna go 9-8 and 10-7, and we'll probably be back here next year talking about the same things over and over again. So
Hey,
that's kind of where
if we're talking about the same thing, but Drew Aller or Lenora Sellers are there, that's good with me. Like I'm not a big draft guy. I infamously just don't care after like a few weeks. I'm just like I'm already over this, and a few months into like February. I will be excited for the draft next year. I will be very much looking forward to seeing who the new quarterback will be, and whoever it is, I'm going to try my hardest to get behind, and we'll go from there. Obviously, I have my biases. Like I said, you see the pennant behind me, and if Drew Aller balls out this year, I'm going to be very much hopeful that it's him. But we have an entire year to worry about that.
yeah, I agree with that. All right, Jared, thanks for coming on, man. Tell them where they can follow you, read your stuff you got coming down the pipe.
Follow the Twitter at JBaileyNFL and read all the work at Behind the Steel Curtain, which is SB Nation's dedicated site for the Pittsburgh Steelers, of which I am the managing editor. So go and read everything going on over there. Like I said, I have at the time of recording, I did a interview with Sebastian Castro earlier this morning. So if it's not out already, it will be very soon. So go and check that out, as well as just the rest of the coverage over at Behind the Steel Curtain for all of your Steelers stuff.
Yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell for more. See you next time.